Yo, what is up guys, welcome to a new video. Today I'm gonna show you how to get a clean and tight sub bass in the entire song. I'm not only gonna show you the kick and sub bass relation on the drop because yeah, that's super important, but it's not the only place in the song where you're gonna have sub bass. And well, I'm not gonna really talk about EQing because I'm sure that you know that you need to cut the sub bass of everything but the kick and the bass. I said this a lot of times, but you know, if you have a little bit of sub bass in one lead, a little bit of sub bass in another lead, a little bit of sub bass in chords, in the claps, in the hats and so on, at the end you're gonna have a lot of sub bass that is gonna make it sound really bad, and the kick and the sub bass are not gonna work well together because there's gonna be a lot of muddiness in between. So make sure to cut all of that. And well, I showed you these tips and a lot more of the tips in my masterclass. If you want to get it, the link is down in the description, and if you want to know more about it, I have a video on YouTube explaining everything. So well guys, with that being said, don't wait more and let's start with this tutorial. So here I have a project that I was working on. I only left some sounds, not the entire project. And well, let's start with the kick. It sounds like this. A normal kick, and here we have our sub bass. So how to make sure that this sounds good? The first thing I'm gonna do is put a volume shaper on your kick. You can use other plugins like for example LFO tool, but Kickstart for example here is not gonna help that much, and Grossbeat can help, but it's gonna be a bit annoying because you have to do it 4 times and it's not that wide, so it's gonna be a bit more difficult. So if I play the kick, we can see here the waveform. So what I'm gonna do is try to follow this waveform. Let's make it a bit smoother like this. And make sure that before the next hit, it goes up. So now we have this in the volume shaper, but the thing I like to do is to cut the kick at the middle of the beat, like this. But I'm gonna make this a bit more smooth. Something like this would be better. So now our kick is gonna be tighter and shorter. So what I'm gonna do now is send this volume shaper to the sub bass. So I click here, click and hold save preset as, and I drag it to the sub bass. But what I'm gonna do in the sub bass volume shaper is right click and click on mirror on X axis. You can do this on LFO tool. I think it's putting the volume fader on -100. And this way what I do is I flip this sidechain. So now the kick and the sub bass are gonna work super well together and they are not gonna clash, because when the kick, for example here, if we say it loses 25% of the volume, at the same spot on the sub bass where we are increasing at 25% of the volume. So it fits really well. But sometimes, you know, it depends on the song and the vibe I want to give. If I want more kind of Melbourne bounce bass, not that much, but something like that, I maybe do something like this, you know, I touch it a little bit. Or if I want it to be a bit smoother, you know, I do something more like this. It depends on you, but the good thing is that you started with a safe point. And you also can send this volume shaper to the mid bass, because even if you cut the sub bass as I did here, there's always a little bit of that sub bass there. So this way I make sure the bass line is working well with the sub bass, because they need to look like it's only one sound. And also this way the sub bass is gonna be tighter. But the good thing about volume shaper is that you can separate bands. So what I'm gonna do now is here, drag it to more or less 100 Hertz. So this way on the sub bass we have this sidechain as in the sub bass sound. But now I'm gonna copy this, I'm gonna put it here. Okay, so it's the same sidechain in the entire frequency spectrum. But on this one, what I'm gonna do is make it a bit smoother. So this way what you're gonna get is a really tight sub bass, but the bass line is not gonna have that much sidechain because maybe it's not really gonna fit. Because the thing is that when there is sidechain in the sub bass and the sub bass is not playing, the kick is there, so it's covering that space and you're not really hearing any silence. But in the mid bass, the problem is that the kick is not fitting that space. So if you have too much sidechain, you know, it's gonna be a gap between those sounds and it's not really gonna be that good. So with volume shaper you can solve this problem with the bands. But the kick and the bass line is not the only place where you have to take care about the sub bass. So for example, this is the build up and I filtered these kicks and it sounds like this. And here on the effects I have a sub drop and a sub riser. Those sounds are gonna clash, and to solve this problem what you need is just a P controller on the kick and an EQ on the other sound, in this case the sub drop. So what I'm gonna do here is just move the first band to more or less 100 Hertz. So it gets the entire sub bass. And then here on the volume, I'm gonna right click into controller. I'm gonna choose the peak controller of the kick, just peak, not peak LFO, not LFO, just peak. And here I'm gonna invert it. Okay, so now I have to move the bass to have it in the center. As you can see, it was on top, so just type 0.5. And now all the time that the kick is gonna play, this EQ is gonna reduce the sub bass. But we can increase a little bit more. What I recommend is to get to the top, not like this. That is like clipping, it's not clipping, you know, but it's the same waveform. So just to get to the peak. So when it's not playing, it's gonna come back on the cue. So this way, as you can see, is reducing every time the kick is playing. And this way, you're gonna leave a space for the kick and you're gonna leave a space for the sub drop. And now we can do exactly the same for the riser. So just move the first band to more or less 100, right click here, link to controller, put it on peak, invert it, and there you have it. But that's not the only problem, because here we have the sub drop and we have the sub riser. So those two sounds are gonna clash. They're not gonna clash with the kick. So in this case, if the kick just stops here because we have the volume shaper, those two sounds here are not gonna sound, but they are gonna sound here, both of them. So in this part, they are gonna clash. And then in this part, they are gonna clash. And then in this part, they are gonna clash. So we need to solve this problem. So how we solve this problem? What I'm gonna do is put a P controller on this one. So as this one is playing, this one is not playing. Just do it the way you want, but I prefer to do it this way because this one is the first that is gonna fade out, and this one is the one that is gonna stay longer. And also because this one comes first and is the one that is adding the impact. So I don't really need the sub riser in this part. It's more important the sub drop. So here I have the P controller on the sub drop, and here I have a fruity balance on the riser. You can use gain plugins, you can use compressor, you can use EQs, just whatever you want that is going to reduce on the frequencies or on the volume. So what I'm going to do is, as before, right click, link to controller. This time I have to choose the P controller of the sub drop, put it on peak, invert it, and now we play it. As you can see, it's up, so we need to move the bass. In this case, it's 0.2. And this is not that much, they are clashing, so what you need to do is increase more here. And if you see that it's not getting to the top, what you have to do is increase the internal volume before it goes to the mixer, this one. Or you can also touch the tension and put it to the max. So this way is upper. And this depends a bit on you and how much you want to reduce. So if we play the song, when this one is playing, this one is reduced in volume. And as this one is fading out, this one is fading in. So they are not gonna clash. Because the problem is that when two sounds are clashing, they're clashing and it sounds bad. But especially if it's in the sub bass, it's gonna sound super bad. So you need to take care of that. And the last thing I want to show you is just when you have a kick on the breakdown. So I have here the kick also filtered. And I have, you know, a break bass. And I have some pads. Just do the same. I just load this EQ on the break bass. I'm gonna put it on 100. Into controller, on the kick, inverted, accept. So now this kick and this bass is not gonna clash. And yeah, of course, you can use just normal sidechain, but this way you don't have to take care about automation. You don't have to enable here the sidechain and disable it here. It's just gonna apply this effect when the kick is sounding, and here it's not gonna apply any effect, as you can see. And I also recommend you to put another EQ, another sidechain for the pads, because maybe you cut the lows of the pad, you cut the sub bass, but there's always a little bit there. And as we did in the mid bass, I recommend you to do it here, so this way you're gonna make sure that the sub bass is really tight and clean. So this way, as you can see, the sub bass of the pads are not gonna interfere with the kick. And what you can do in this case is maybe make it a bit steeper, so it doesn't touch the mids. But you make sure that the sub bass is really clean. So well guys, this is it. I think it's something really easy and really fast to do. You can always do this by using normal sidechain as kickstart, you know, but this way I think it's gonna feel a lot better, because for example, when you have the kick on the sub drop playing, the sub drop is only gonna reduce the volume when the kick is playing and only the length the kick is playing. Because sometimes when you use kickstart, for example, you have a bit more sidechain, you have less, you have to touch the mix knob, and this way when you touch the mix knob, maybe at the beginning you still have a bit of that sound, you know, and this way is a lot tighter and a lot cleaner. Also because in this sub drop, for example, we have a little bit of highs, and those highs are not clashing, are not interfering with the kick, so we don't touch them. And also this way you don't have to take care about automations, you don't need to take care about when to enable the sidechain, where not to enable the sidechain. And also even in sounds that are clashing and they don't need sidechain, like the sub drop and the sub riser, they are not gonna clash with these tips. So well guys, if you know more tips about how to clean the sub bass and how to get a tight sub bass, just leave it down below in the comments. Don't forget to leave a like if this video helped you. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any tutorial. Thank you for watching, and guys, see you in the next video.